The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our March webinar, which will consist of a tutorial of our personal financial portal. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. This webinar is part of our monthly webinar series, and today we will be taking a look at the Personal Financial Portal, a simple and secure online location where you can monitor the financial components of your life. We will be providing an overview of how to sign up for the Personal Financial Portal, the tools that are available to you through the portal, and how to use these resources to help you better organize your financial life, in addition to how they can help you make more informed investment and lifestyle decisions. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, please note that in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. During the presentation, feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A link on the webinar menu. Then, at the end of the presentation, we will take some time to go through these. With that said, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Troy Hammond, President and CEO at Pensionmark. Troy is a published author on retirement plans and has been acknowledged as the premier retirement planning consultant. He is also frequently featured in industry publications and as a panelist on current retirement plan issues. I would like to thank Troy for joining us today, and with that said, Troy, I'll now turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Christine, for the introduction, and thanks everybody for attending. This is one of our most attended webinars of the last year, so we're very excited to see the interest in this, especially given, me personally, the passion I have for this tool and what it can do for people. I've been a user of this portal for now about 1.5 years. Was one of the original beta testers as we were looking to offer it, and I can tell you it's been something that I'm very excited about, and certainly there's been a tremendous amount of interest from all of you, and seeing the number of people attending this webinar, I can see that there's definitely interest in learning more about it. So with that being said, I'll jump right into it. As Christine mentioned, we go through this, if you have questions, go ahead and send them in the chat box. I will actually try to address the questions as we go along. I prefer to do it that way so the questions don't get lost. Depending on time constraints, if I don't get to your question right away, don't panic. The ones that we don't get to, we'll try to get to at the end, and if for some reason we run out of time, we'll actually reach out to you after the webinar and help get your questions answered. So let me start by giving you kind of the high-level overview of what the portal does, and then what I'm going to do is spend most of our time today demoing it. So if you look around kind of this flow chart, if you will, it covers the high-level items. So first of all, it's kind of a spending and cash flow and budgeting monitor. So the program allows you to track your spending habits, to monitor your cash flow, to create budgets, to compare your assets against goals. It allows, as I'm kind of going clockwise here, you have all sorts of reporting that you can do, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. Cash flow reporting, retirement reporting, investment reporting, net worth statements, things like that. You update it daily in real time, so I'm going to show you how to link accounts, and one of the nice things that about this portal, and one of the things that was critical as we were setting it up, was to make sure that once you had all your accounts linked, you didn't have to keep going in and updating everything yourself. So I'll show you the system is designed so that basically once you've linked your accounts, they're updated daily automatically in real time, and you don't have to go in and kind of do the manual entry. Monitoring all your accounts in one secure location, you'll see that in a second. It really is kind of this aggregation tool where you're able to pull in everything from checking, savings, investments, insurance, real estate, all into one place, one location, kind of one-stop shopping for your financial life, if you will. You've got all sorts of mobile access, so whether you use a smartphone or a tablet, iPhone, Android, doesn't matter. You can have access to this in pretty much every available source that you have available to you. There's all sorts of workshops, and I'll show you those. And then there's also the ability to track rewards such as frequent flyer miles, things like that. So that's kind of the high-level overview. Let me just jump into it, though, because I think the demo is really where you get the benefit from it. So first, I'm just going to show you our website, and the reason I'm doing this is twofold. One, to show you the link. This is kind of an easy way to get to the portal. So if you look over here on the middle right-hand side, you'll see where it says log into your personal financial portal. So our website is pensionmark.com, and I'll show you a slide at the end that has that link as well. If you go to pensionmark.com and you go over here to the right where it says log into your personal financial portal, literally you just click on that. Now I think I'm already logged in, so it's going to go right to the portal. In your case, it would give you a username and password, and you type that in and it would send you into this screen. The other thing before I leave the website, if you scroll down to the bottom right here, you'll see a little box that says Personal Financial Portal. These are short 2-3 minute videos. I encourage you to view these. These are great. What is it? It just kind of talks about kind of a brief description of what I'm going to do today. There's a video on the mobile features available to you through the portal. And then if you're concerned about portal security, there's a video on that as well. I'm going to talk about that real quickly today, but there's a more detailed, if you will, elaborate description of how the security works. So let's dig right into it. The portal starts when you log in. You go right to this, what we call dashboard screen. And this is kind of, if you will, a summary of your financial life. And if you look at each of these little tiles, they all have interactivity. So this account, this is a sample account. So you'll see that there are some areas that maybe don't have as much history or that we haven't put data in. But this will show you, for example, your historical net worth. And this demo account was set up in December, so you can see the historical net worth of this individual since December. But you can see these little arrows here. You can kind of toggle through different things. So on this side, it shows your cash versus your debt, shows your net worth and how that's changed year to date, assets, liabilities, and then you've got your net worth chart. Down here, you've got your spending and budgeting. So this is going to show you, and I'm going to show you more details of all this in a second, but this will show you your spending month to date, year to date, etc. And then over here on the right, you've got your budgeting, and again, I'm going to go into more detail on this. One thing I want to point out in this website is we have access to certain information on our end, which so if you have questions and you want us to help you with some, especially as we get into the workshops, I'll show you in a minute, we can assist you with that. One of the things we cannot see on our end, so the technology is built, we cannot see spending and budgeting. Our thought was you may not want us to see where you're spending your money, and it may not really help us in terms of providing assistance to you. If it gets to a point where you want us to see that information and there's a need to do that, you can always turn that on. But we default to have that technology or that information turned off, and the only person who can turn that on is you. So just know that the kind of this middle section, the spending and budgeting section, these sections are blocked out for us, so we cannot see those. In the bottom, you have your insurance protection, and on the right, you'll see kind of what I would call an informational tile. You'll see this lady or other people like her kind of spread throughout the portal. And each of these they're all really short videos that can kind of help you get through certain sections of the website. So if you ever are stumbling through something or if you have questions, of course you can always reach out to us, but know that there's always these little videos, tutorials that can help you. Up here on the upper left, again, it's our contact information, and we encourage you to reach out to us at any time. And then down here is a quick summary of your accounts. So again, they're categorizing these accounts, but this is a good example of the types of accounts that you have available to you that you can link into this system. So cash accounts would be checking, savings, investment accounts, things like that, cash investment accounts, credit cards, your investments. This could be your 401k or other retirement plan, your IRAs, after-tax investments, etc. Real estate investments could go in here as well, depending on how they're categorized. You have a life insurance section. You have loans section. Typically, your biggest loan, if you own a home, is going to be your mortgage, but other loans would also fall into this category. And then you have your personal property. So this would be your residence or other properties that you own that aren't strictly investment properties, they would fall under this category. So it kind of groups, if you will, your accounts into these 6 categories. And again, I'm going to show you here how you set these accounts up. So this is a quick snapshot of the dashboard. Let me show you real quickly how do we get this set up. So I'm going to go into the organizer here, which is the second tab on the top. And this is a demo account, so it looks a little bit different than what you would see. But basically what you do is you go in here and you essentially link every account, every financial institution that you work with that has a username and password, you can pretty much link to this. We found some really small financial institutions, some smaller regional banks or credit unions that don't have the technology, but pretty much everybody has the technology to link to this account. This is the same what's called screen scraping technology that you see with all of the big providers, whether it's Quicken or Fidelity or whoever. Mint.com, if you're familiar with that, same screen scraping technology. And just to give you a quick overview of how it works, so if you're going to add a institution, you go in here, and again, we'll use Fidelity as an example, and they're going to have a lot. You can type in your institution name, and you can kind of scroll down here and say, oh, well, I have an account at Fidelity Net Benefits, which is, or maybe I have a 401k with Fidelity, or maybe I have a charitable fund with Fidelity, whatever it may be. You click on that, it's going to ask for your username and password, and then it's going to link the account. So let's talk real quickly about security. One of the nice things about this technology is most financial institutions, as I've mentioned, have built the technology to create what's called a non-transactional link with informational services like the one we have here through the portal. Talking about security, and basically again, the reason that this is such high security is those username and passwords, once that non-transactional link is created with your financial institution, the username and password are dropped from the system. So you don't have to worry about having all your username and passwords stored out there somewhere. The system does not store them. It just uses them to create a link to your financial institution. And again, the financial institutions have allowed this because they're non-transactional links. So once you've set up all your accounts, theoretically, and again, knock on wood, it's never happened before, but theoretically, if a hacker were to break into the system, all they could really do is see your information. They couldn't transact on anything. And again, I encourage you, if you want to learn more about security, you can go onto our website and play the video. So very high security, and again, protects you against the ability to have someone, again, access your username and password. So you go in, and actually, we just had a great question, and it brings up a point I forgot to mention. And the question was, if the username and password is not stored, what happens if the link is broken? Well, that's a great question, and I personally use Citibank for my banking, and they change their security protocols about every 4 months. So about every 4 months, when I go into my portal, the system will actually flag me and say, hey, the Citibank link is broken. And it will typically ask me some security questions, or perhaps ask me for my username and password again, and it will reestablish the link. So as financial institutions change their security protocols, you may be asked to update the link, but again, the system's not going to store your username and password, and that's for your protection. So once you've established these links, then every single day, this data is updated. So once a day, the system will actually use that non-transactional link to pull in your account information. And not just balances, but transactional information. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So once you've linked all your accounts, the second section is real estate. If you own real estate, you want to put all your real estate holdings in here. The third tab down the side is family and friends. So you want to put in this case, it's a husband and wife, a son and daughter. The fourth section is professional contacts. Now, our information is always going to be there first. Again, if you have questions or concerns or want more information, we want to make sure you have easy access to us. But you can also add other professional contacts. So as an example, I have my CPA who is linked to my portal. So when it's tax time and he needs to access information, he can go in directly to my portal and get what he needs. And you can set certain levels of security in terms of what information they can and can't see, but it's an advantage here that if you decide you want to add other professional contacts to have access to your information, they can. The next section is income and expenses. So this is, what am I earning? And then what are my annual living expenses? And what's great about this, and I'm going to show you how this ties in to the workshop in a second. A lot of us, when we're trying to create budgets and trying to figure out our expenses, it's hard to just kind of start from a blank sheet of paper and say, okay, what do I expect that I'm going to spend? So what's beautiful about this system, and I'll show you in a second the reporting, because it's not just the balances that are downloaded, but actually the transactions that are downloaded. The system can actually do estimates for you. So you see this button that says Estimate from Spending. You can actually do estimates based on your historical spending. So certainly if you've been in the system for a month, that estimate's not going to be super accurate. But if you've been in the system for a year, 18 months like I have, and you click this Estimate button, it will really give you an accurate estimate of what your annual living expenses are broken out by category. This next section is future goals. So as an example, if you had children that you wanted to put through college, and for those of you who have children that you are looking at that's a monster goal. You want to put that in there and say, we have a future education expense or maybe a major expense. We want to buy a camper when we get turned 65, and that's going to cost X dollars. You can put these things in here and kind of plan for the future. The financial priorities section, this is where each you and your spouse, if you have one, can kind of identify what your priorities are. And this plays into the workshops in a second. So example, planning for retirement might be number 1, planning for a business might be number 2, managing a budget might be number 3. These are all interactive and they're all drag and drop. So for example, John might say, actually, you know what, budgeting is a higher priority. I'm going to drag that up to a higher priority, and that will impact some of the things we're going to talk about in a minute. And then last but not least is the risk tolerance questionnaire. And if you see, there's 12 questions. They're pretty simple questions. Basically, we're just trying to identify what your risk tolerance is. And you can see based on the questions in this sample, this person has a moderate to aggressive risk tolerance. As we go into the workshops, we need to understand what your risk tolerance is, because that's going to tie into to some of the questions and answers that we go through. So I'm going to do the workshop in a second. I'm going to come back to that tab. I want to show you the couple of the other tabs first, and then kind of show you how it all ties into the workshop. So let's first talk about spending. So one of the things, especially if you use Quicken or if you use Microsoft Money, they have the ability to track your historical spending by account, by category, etc. Well, this system has the same ability to do that. So again, it's pulling in data from your checking account, from your savings accounts, from your credit cards, and all of that data is being fed into this system, and it's going to allow you to have very comprehensive reporting about where you're spending your money. So again, you can see date range. I'm going to switch to all time here, and you can see it gives you this nice pie chart that breaks out each category of your spending. So mortgage and rent is this blue one, bills and utilities is the second one, unclassified is the third one, etc. So if you look at bills and utilities, you can actually dig in deep to any of those sections and see, well, what am I spending within that section? So you can drill down into your spending habits and find out where you're spending. Again, different date ranges. You can look at different categories. You can, right now it's defaulted to looking at all of your accounts in aggregate. You can actually look at specific accounts if you want to do that. So it really allows you to drill down into your spending. And then as I mentioned earlier, budget. So how do we take our spending and translate that into a budget? Well, the nice thing is the system will do that for you. So you can create an auto budget, which is what's happened here, and where literally you can take your historical spending and you can say, well, look at what I typically spend, and let's use that as a basis for my budget. Then you can go in and you can make adjustments. So example, you can say, well, okay, I used my historical spending to create this budget, but I don't like that I'm spending so much here or so much there, or maybe I want to actually increase my budget here. So you can go through and you can modify the auto budget, and you can recreate that auto budget at any time. You know, budgeting and spending, these are kind of the basics, if you will, of financial planning, and they're so important because as we think about finding the money to save for retirement and then fast forwarding into retirement and managing our spending, you know, it all comes back to the basics of, hey, let's get a budget, let's understand what our budget is, and then let's make sure we're within that budget. And I'm going to click on the home screen real quickly, and that's why we put these things on the dashboard. You know, here's what your spending is and here's what you've budgeted. We just want to make sure that you have that kind of awareness for you. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is transactions. This system will actually log each and every transaction that from all of your accounts combined. So again, this is set defaults to last 30 days. I'm going to pull up all time. And you can see the system auto-categorizes transactions that it can recognize, similar to what you'd see again in a Quicken or a Microsoft Money. And then you have the ability to go over here and say, you know what, this is actually not fast food, this is something else. And if you change that, you can then create rules that says, well, anytime you see this company, define it as auto registration or whatever it may be. And it will change the rule. It will make a rule so that every time that this word comes through, it will categorize that as whatever you define it to be. And there's a whole list of rules that you can go into, and you can manage all of your rules in one place. So this demo account doesn't have any rules, but if you were to have a list of rules, you could go in and you could change and modify those rules over time. You could also include or exclude certain accounts to apply to certain rules. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of setting up rules. So for those of you who are like me, who like every single transaction to be categorized, and that gives you a much better reporting, you have the ability to do that in a very simple fashion within the system. Same thing with investments. You have all sorts of reporting that you can look at from your investment portfolios, and you can look at them on an aggregate basis. Now, this sample account has 2 investment accounts. There's a Great West IRA and a Fidelity 401k. You can look at each one of those accounts independently, or you can look at the aggregate of those accounts together. And again, what it gives you the ability to do is dig in a little bit deeper. You can look at your asset allocation as it applies to all of your investments combined. And again, if you're married, it could be you and your spouse. Or you can look at each individual account. You can do analysis, and again, this is a demo account, so it doesn't have the historical reporting. But you can look at the net change of your account over time. And then similar to what you can do on the checking and savings is you can do transactional reporting. So again, with this demo account, it doesn't have it, but on yours, you would actually be able to see transactions that occurred within your different investment accounts. This next tab, the Vault, and a question just came through, what if we put all my expenses on a credit card, but I pay the credit card off each month? The transactions are still going to appear in the spending report. So as an example, if I go into your credit card, so here are your credit card transactions. Even if you pay your credit card off each month, these transactions are still going to come through in the data feed. So you're still going to be able to see and categorize your expenses. So going back to the Vault tab, this is a great place to store what I would call kind of your most important financial documents. So I use my wife as an example. I pay the bills and do all of the finances for us. And so this is a great place for me to house things like our real estate documents, insurance documents, our trust, all of the things that perhaps I'm dealing with throughout our life to get our financial lives in order, but that maybe she's not involved in. So typically, again, think about legal documents, think about insurance documents, think about things that if you needed to go to one place to get them, you could find them. So it's a very simple upload process, and you can create new folders and kind of organize and categorize, if you will, the important financial components of your life. Now, what that also ties into, again, using my example, since I do all of the finances and pay all the bills in my household, this portal is a great place for my wife to just be able to log in and kind of see where we're at. Now, this is a sample account, clearly not my account, but she could go in and see where we're at financially. She can look at spending. She can look at, and if she needs to find, again, certain legal documents, she has access to those things. And before we had this program available to us, you know, I had these things kind of scattered everywhere. So there was literally an instruction manual for my wife. All right, you need to go here to get this information, there to go that information. Here's where my files are, and you need to go in there to get all the documents. And well, that's behind us now. Literally, if something were to happen to me, heaven forbid, she has one place she can go to, and everything's right there. This last tab across the top is your reporting tab. And I mentioned that in the beginning. You have a lot of flexibility in terms of reporting. I've shown you some transactional reporting already on the investment side and on the spending side. But you can get much more elaborate than that. So again, this first report that came up was balance sheet. But if you click this down arrow, you can see there are a wide variety of reports you can run. Asset allocation reports, insurance summary, balance sheets, net worth reports, insurance summaries, investment reports. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but you have a ton of financial reports that you can run. And some of these, again, for me, they're great for my accountant. So things that typically I would have to prepare and provide to my accountant, he can just go in and get the information real time as of today. So before I go into the organizer, I want to point out one more thing. If you look at this investment section, I mentioned that the accounts are updated once a day. If you're in investments like these stocks or exchange-traded funds that are showing up here on this list that are actually updated throughout the day, your account will actually be updated throughout the day. So in this case, you'll see two of the investments that this sample account is in. The price of those are actually updated throughout the day. So you don't have to wait to the end of the day to see your update. You can actually go in here and see that today you're actually up 0.08% on the accounts that are traded throughout the day. So it really is real-time updated data. Another question just came through. Do you have the ability to change the category for an expense? Yes, you do. So once you've defined a certain category for an expense, if you later decide you want to change that, not a problem, and you can change the rule and you can go back and change all the existing ones or just change future ones. There's a lot of flexibility there. Okay, so next thing I want to go into, I skipped this workshop button. This is really kind of where it all ties together, if you will. I mean, obviously, getting your financial life in order, being able to run those reports, being able to get your spending and budgeting in order is all critical. But where we try to tie it together, at least from our perspective, is how does that tie into my future? And you can see we have a few different workshops. There's one on investments, and basically what this does is it looks at your current situation and it looks at your risk tolerance and says, hey, you know what, you've told us you're this type of risk, but you're really this type of risk, so there's a disparity here. Maybe it's something you need to consider. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but that's a nice little feature. There is a kind of spending and budgeting kind of balancing tool. And again, I encourage you to take advantage of that and say, hey, where do I have too much debt? Am I spending too much on my housing? Am I saving enough? Those sorts of tools are very valuable. The real depressing one, if you have children, is college education funding? Am I saving enough for college? Again, you can go through this workshop and you can take, you pick your child, identify when they're going to be attending college. You can choose a school, and you can start setting up a strategy to save for college education funding. But the one I'm going to focus on today is this one. Are you saving enough for retirement? And most financial websites, especially your 401k website or your retirement plan website, are going to have some sort of future value calculation that says, are you on track for retirement? But they're very simplistic because they typically only look at the money you have in that plan. They generally don't look at your spouse's assets if you're married. They don't look at any assets you have outside of the plan. They're not looking at your specific spending or savings habits. It's just kind of a point-in-time look at here's where you're at today and do we think you're on track. The beauty of this calculation and this forecasting is it really is probably the most comprehensive you can get, because what it does is it really has the ability to look at your situation and every single component of your situation and identify, based on all of these factors, are you on track? So let me show you what I mean. First of all, you can define your retirement ages. So in this example, we've identified that John wants to retire at 87, and we put in a life expectancy of 87. Let's change that to 90. Jane's going to start retiring at 68. She's got a life expectancy of 90. And then we go back and let's say, and these are all interactive sliders, so let's say John says, you know what, I actually want to retire at 65, and Jane wants to retire at 66. Let's change those, and you can see how dynamically this chart has changed. So now the system is saying, well, now you have 18 of 30 years funded. We're underfunded for retirement. You can click this asset tab down here, and it will give you a kind of what I would call a traditional drawdown graph. The blue is your assets and the red is your distributions. You say, uh-oh, we're going to run out of money. And I'll show you in a second. There are ways the system will give you ideas on how to fix that. But so again, you can adjust the sliders on your age. This is a really nice feature. Typically in these forecasting models, they just assume a real simplistic, well, you're probably going to spend 75% of your paycheck, of your final paycheck in retirement. Well, that's a pretty simplistic view of what your spending is going to be expected to be in retirement. So what this system will do is you can actually click the Help Me Estimate button, and you can say, okay, based on what I actually spend today, so what I am spending today in my pre-retirement years, what do I expect that I will spend in my post-retirement years? And so it actually looks at your historical spending. So the beauty of that is we're not picking some hypothetical number. We're saying, okay, let's look at what you really spend, and let's define, and typically people spend about 80% in retirement of what they spent in pre-retirement. But you might say, you know what, that's not me. I want to travel. I want to do all this stuff. I want to spend 120%. So you have the ability to adjust this number, and it's going to get you a real accurate forecast of what your spending will be at retirement, which is one of the reasons you get much more accurate results from this. In this existing savings tab, you can identify which accounts you're going to use for retirement. So this last section, real estate, that might be your primary residence. And you say, you know, I'm not going to use that for retirement, but this IRA is definitely, and this 401k also is definitely something that I'm using to fund my retirement. So I'm going to check those two boxes. These are checking and savings accounts and things that I'm not using for retirement. The nice thing about this, as I mentioned, these amounts are updated on a daily basis. So you don't have to go in and keep updating this. Once you've got this set up, you can just click on the workshop and go in at any time and see where you're at. So you can see we filled the gap a little bit because we added one of the accounts. You can identify your monthly savings. So right now this person's putting away $1,000 a month, and they have some company contributions. Their spouse is putting away $900. They've got some company contributions. They're also putting $500 a month into an investment account. So that's all included in these calculations. And you can see these little blue boxes. I'm going to show you in the second where it kind of ties it all together. But if you look here, it says your retirement would be fully funded if you increased your increased contributions to $1,164 per month. So it does give you kind of hints throughout to say, well, how do we fill this gap? How do we get to a comfort level that we're going to have enough money at retirement? There's a question about Social Security. I'm going to show you that right now. So how does Social Security tie into this? Well, you can turn Social Security on or off. It defaults to on. And again, it's going to be very accurate, because what it's going to do is it's going to take your income level and it's going to say, okay, based on your income, what's my estimated Social Security? So based on your current income, this is the estimated Social Security, and then you can see, because we updated that, it actually filled the gap a little bit. You can also include other sources of income down here. So if you can project that you're going to receive, whether it's annuities or a pension plan or an inheritance or things like that, you can identify those as well to kind of help fill that gap. And then last but not least are the assumptions. So the system defaults to an inflation rate of 3%. And the savings growth rate is actually identified by the organizers. So remember, you went in and you answered all these questions about your current life, and you answered a risk tolerance questionnaire. So the system kind of says, you know, based on your situation, our expectations are that 7.44% is probably pretty realistic. Now, as a user of this system, I can say, gosh, an easy way to fill that gap is just to drag this up and say, if I get 8.5%, I'm done. But you see this little error that comes up over here. It says, you know, 8.5% is probably too high for you. Based on the questions that you've answered for us and your risk tolerance, we're just worried that that's probably not a realistic assumption. A more realistic assumption is really 7.44%. And if you adjust that, you can see that it then readjusts your chart here to show you that we still have a little bit of a gap. So you can slide this around and play with this at any time. It's going to help you, again, give you some ideas and help you to understand better different ways to fill this void, if you will. So then once you've gone through and kind of updated all these and made sure they're all accurate, you can see we still, in this case, we have a gap. Now the good news is that's not a huge gap. It may seem like a huge gap, but this person's off to a good start. You know, they've got, if they don't change a thing in their life, they're going to be able to fund 24 of 30 years of retirement based on the assumptions in the system. But if they say, gosh, that's not good enough, we got to start filling this gap, what are some ideas? Well, if you look at this bottom left area, and it may be hard to read on your screen, I apologize for that. It says possible options for achieving your goal. And the first one is, you know what, you can save more. Save another 800 or increase your contributions to 880 per month. You know, another thing you can do is reduce your expenses. If you reduced your expenses just a little bit, you could meet that goal. If you delayed your retirement, if you said, hey, you know what about if I delay my retirement a couple years, that would help you fill that gap. Or you could kind of play around with all of those. So again, because of the dynamic nature of this program, you could say, well, what if I push my retirement age to 66 and I save another $200 a month and I reduce my expenses just a little bit? And you're going to see you can kind of play around with those ideas and try to get that gap filled. And as I mentioned, because this is updated daily without you having to do anything, at any given moment you can just log in and click on this workshop and say, you know what, how am I doing today? You just click here, and you won't, unless something changed in your life, you got a new account or you're saving more, or you literally can just go in here and at any given day you're going to be able to get your current day's gap analysis. So this is one of the things we're really excited about. I think the beauty of this program is manyfold. For those of you who use Money or Quicken, you recognize the value of this system and the ability to manage and track your spending and budgeting and see all your accounts in one place. But again, where we see the real value of this is taking all of that data and using it to say, all right, am I going to be able to live a dignified retirement based on what I'm doing today? And if not, what are some ways to get there? And you can see there's a next step button. You probably saw that a few times throughout the demo. And in all these cases, we're driving you back to us. We're saying, hey, you know what? If you need help, call us. If you need help filling this gap, call us. We can help you identify strategies to fill this gap. We can answer questions maybe as you go through this and you say, I don't quite understand what that means. How is that going to impact me? Those are the type of questions we love. Feel free to call us and we can kind of walk you through that. I'm going to go back real quickly as I wrap up here to the home screen again. And one last thing I want to show you, first of all, on the top you'll see there's an education center and there's a help screen. There's also an ability to join a screen sharing session. So if you're having trouble kind of manipulating or managing some of the parts of the site, we can actually do a screen share with you and help walk you through it. But one of the nice additional features of this program, which I really like, is this Manage Alert section. And literally, you can go in here and you can tell the system to alert you in certain situations. So as an example, you can say, you know what, alert me when the cash balance of any of my accounts falls below a certain level, or you can identify a specific account. Say, tell me when this specific account goes below or above a certain level. Tell me when my credit card goes above a certain level. If I have an expense that's greater than a certain amount, send me an alert. Tell me if I'm looking like I'm going to exceed my budget. You can do all sorts of announcements for investments. You can put all sorts of reminders. So what this does is you can say, you know what, to simplify my financial situation, rather than me having to log on every day and check this thing, if there's certain things I'm specifically concerned about or I want to receive, you can tell the system to push that information out to you in an email. So for me, I have once a week, I have a notification that's sent to me that just gives me a financial summary. So that's this one right here. So I get this weekly financial summary sent to me, and then I have a couple other things in here that are flagged so that if something weird happens that I normally would be concerned about, the system's going to email me and say, hey, Troy, you told us if you see an expense greater than $2,000 or if your credit card balance goes above a certain level to notify you, so we're notifying you. So this is a nice little feature. Again, it kind of keeps us honest regarding our finances and allows us to not have to proactively go out and find this information. The system will actually reach out to us. Okay, I've got a couple questions coming in, so I want to address those now. Okay, so the question was, oops, sorry about that. The question was if down the road, if I end up not having an account with Pensionmark, do I have ability to export the data? As it currently stands, you're going to be able to keep your account active. There are certain ways to export the data. It is a lot of different data, though, and that's something that that right now there isn't a way to, say, export it and import it into a Quicken or a Microsoft Money, but there are ways to access and export the data. It says when it's tax time, can W-2s and 1099s be imported? And yes, they can. So if I go back to the vault here, the data itself, the system won't, and I don't think this is what the question is, but the system won't actually go in and read your W-2 and put the data in, but you could create a folder here that says W-2s, and you could store those W-2s in that folder. If you were giving this, for instance, you're a tax accountant, access to your portal, that might be a good idea, to put all your kind of tax documents in here so it's an easy place for your accountant to go get them, and also a nice safe place that you can go back and access them at a later time. The next question is about tax burden. Is that calculated based on your income and zip code? No, it is not. The system will not try to identify your tax rates. There's really nothing in the system that's going to say, you know, here's your tax rate, here's what your net pay is going to be. But what it does is it looks at net income, and that's how it projects out your future values and does all the analysis there. And the next question, are the alerts user-specific, i.e. specific for Jane and specific for John? That's a great question. The way the system's set up today, they are not. So basically, you're going to have an email address that's tied to this account. And when you go in and you set up alerts, the alerts are going to be sent to that email address. So you could set it up. You could set up a system where it goes to both people, or one person or the other, but you cannot set up specific alerts to go to one person and specific alerts to go to a second person. That's a great question. In fact, such a good question, I'm going to put that in as an idea for enhancement. That would be a nice feature to add. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I appreciate all those great questions. I hope this was helpful. And as I said earlier, I encourage you, reach out to our call center if you are going through this process and you have questions or having trouble logging into the system. A couple last things before I hand it back to Christine. Some social media ways you can stay connected with us: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. There are videos about the financial portal on YouTube, not only how it works, but also the security videos and the mobile videos are all available on YouTube, so you can certainly go search for Pensionmark on YouTube and you'll see it there. And then here's the information for our call center. As I mentioned, we encourage you to contact us, whether it's via phone or email. And if you have any questions about the portal, how it works, how to access the information, or if you want to set up your account. So kind of the last question, I think, is, okay, this looks great, but I haven't set my account up. How do I do that? If you want to set up your financial portal account, you simply contact us here at the call center. And all we need from you is your name, the company you work for, your birth date, and the email address you want to use. And we will set you up, and you will get an email directly that will allow you to go in and set up the username and password. A couple last questions that flew in, so I'm going to answer these before I pass it back to Christine. Can this be retrieved on any computer? It can. So you'll have a secure username and password. Pretty much any computer that you have internet access on, you're going to be able to see this data. And again, you can see it on iPads, tablets, Android devices, iPhones. You pretty much anywhere you have internet, you'll be able to access this data. And then the last question is, are we going to present this webinar again? We typically do this webinar once a year, but again, if you want to replay, that you can go onto our website or onto the YouTube site, and certainly you'll find multiple replays there. And then one last question before I pass it back to Christine. I promise this time someone said, hey, I set an account up, but I don't remember my password. Not a problem. Call us here at the call center. We'll reset your password. You'll get an email confirmation. You'll be able to go in and set your new password up directly. So with that, I appreciate everyone's attention, and I'm going to pass it back to Christine.
Great. Thank you so much, Troy. That was all really great information. That will conclude our question and answer period. And again, if anyone would like to sign up, as Troy mentioned, for the Personal Financial Portal, or has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your dedicated service team here at Pensionmark. And you can reach us at 888-201-5488, and that number is up on the screen, as well as you can email us at info@pensionmark.com. And as Troy mentioned, this webinar is recorded, and the replay will be posted on our website on the Investor Education Center, as well as our YouTube within 10 business days. I thank you all for joining us today, and once again, Troy, I would like to thank you for taking the time to present today.